welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is bringing play into your parenting. So Bridgie and I really hope with this to give you an overview, if you've not heard of it before, of what it might be, look like, how it can add to, expand, and even make easier the rule. The rule? No. Well, yes, the rules. How can it make the rules easier?
It can make the rules. It can make so many rules easier, I think, and it kind of softens so many edges, I think, in parenting.
Yeah, so I was trying to think of boundaries and instead got rules that came out of my mouth. So thanks for following along there. It's late at night here, so we'll just keep going. And if you're already familiar with Playful Parenting, we hope to perhaps give you a few anecdotal stories or perhaps some ideas. And sometimes it's just lovely to have a refresher and a reminder, because don't we all need that? It doesn't need to feel refreshed and sometimes just reminded in what can sometimes feel like a sludgy slog as you just keep moving day after day. So we hope that's reinvigorating for you if you're already familiar, and that it's revelationary for you if you're not. So before we do that, please scroll on down on the nourishingthemotherwebsite.com.au and sign up to join our newsletter. Once every so often, every few weeks, we will shoot you off an email that has links to everything that's going on and we're putting out in the world, so you don't miss a beat and you can pick and choose where you dive deeper. So to join our community, please drop in your email at nourishingthemother.com.au.
Beautiful. So why play? I think that play as a form of parenting is powerful, because if you consider that 9 out of 10 times we can directly address the biggest challenges with our children when we meet them with connection. And that most of the time when children's connection needs are met, that in itself means that a lot of behavioural challenges can kind of sort themselves out when kids are feeling connected to us and connected to themselves. And play is the language of childhood. And when we consider the kinds of play that we're going to talk about in this podcast, we're considering play not simply just playing on the floor like with our child, but play almost as a form of a therapeutic modality, in a way, of parenting our child, so that they feel seen, heard, connected to, and are able to release tension, activation in the nervous system, feelings that are stored from their day in relationship with us in safety. And from that place, they feel filled up and able to often more likely to cooperate, and to essentially move to the next kind of transition point, or, whether that's going somewhere, whether that's cooperating to get dressed, whether that's bedtime, whatever it is. And so you and I over the years have integrated a lot of this just into our day-to-day parenting. And so we thought now's a good time to to kind of put a little pin in it and chat around it, would you say, Jules?
Well, I think particularly as we come into the festive period, now you and I spoke about this, probably it was this time last year, but it's part of why we do our Advent, our Kids Kindness Advent Collective, because we fully recognise that this part of life where school starts to finish, we're not quite sure what's happening with next year yet for some little people. It's, oh my gosh, presents, what am I getting? All the parties, people. I mean, of course, COVID might have changed that, might not, again, more instability. And so the frenzy that can become a child's nervous system can send them really spiraling. And it can make our lives and our family lives really far more disruptive and less enjoyable, really. So playful parenting, I think, is for me, the more that there's challenge, the more that we need play. So when I think about the festive season and in relevance to our Kids Kindness Advent, is we have an entire section dedicated to family connection, which is all about when children are dysregulated, how do we help them co-regulate with our nervous system? And play is part of that when you consider they can laugh something out or they can cry something out. And depending on your wiring, you might find one easier to be with than the other. So that, I think, is also where as a parent you choose to play to your strengths, as long as you're using play for the perspective of I'm looking for the release, I'm looking for the nervous system reset, I'm looking for the playing through the edges where we're just beyond the comfort zone and maybe starting to branch off into some territory that's a little bit anxiety butterfly in my body. Maybe I'm dealing with a little bit of fear around the dark, or I don't know, whatever fears your children have around, I don't know, the dentist, the doctors, I don't know, whatever their thing is that's got going on. How can we play with that and play our way through that, where we're able to offer an experience? Because in the imaginative mind, we don't physiologically recognize any difference between reality, in inverted commas, and the fantasy that plays out in our mind. Biologically, that's why dreams affect us so much and why fantasies affect us so much, right? Is because physiologically it's not recognized.
We're responding the same way as if.
Yeah, exactly. Which, if you consider, it's incredibly powerful. And really the foundations of so much of the esoteric work that people do now around affirmations and law of attraction. And, you know, this is just another form of that. Is we look at that and go, what an enormous opportunity to be able to offer healing and a greater capacity of nervous system tolerance and courage with our children if we're able to see behavior as an invitation in. And of course, our children don't say, you know, can you help me? They say, can you play with me? So it's really from that perspective that we look at parenting with play. I mean, we learned, the original's probably Lawrence Cohen, and then did workshops over the years with Marion Rose and Lael Stone, and it became part of our way of life, really part of how we look at our children's behaviour. So the more that we start to spiral towards Christmas, the more the festivities and the craziness and the nervous system wiring starts to go through the roof. We really invite you to consider, how can I use play to my advantage so that it brings the end result of a calm and connected nervous system, but that doesn't look like calming the person down. It often looks like the opposite in order to unwind and uncoil a nervous system. And I find that it's almost like a juxtaposition, isn't it? Very interesting, particularly for people that don't understand children's, I guess, neurobiology in the way that you and I do.
And I think also what can tend to happen at this time of year is because parents are beginning to feel anxious or more stressed or overwhelmed because of, you know, like the stuff and the potentially financial stress, particularly this year, that there's more of a desire often to control children as a way to separate the feelings that they bring up in us from what we have to feel. And so we will use, like, mainstream parenting would kind of use carrot and stick kind of approaches, or rewards and punishments, as a way to kind of engineer a child's behavior, like, you know, you won't get, you know, do that, or Father Christmas won't come, or, you know, like whatever ends up being the threat, the default when a parent's stressed, you know, there's a threat.
Which is part of why I don't like Elf on the Shelf.
Exactly.
Now, I know that's been a contentious point every year that I've said that for many, many listeners, because I recognize that some of you will not be using the elf on the shelf in the way that it's, you know, the eyes like Big Brother watching you and making sure you're towing the line and doing the right thing, and he knows when you're naughty. I get that some of you are not using it that way, but it's that whole perspective that I'm deeply uncomfortable with, and particularly the idea that we are training our children to be coerced against their own innate needs, desires, the opportunity to advance their capacity to negotiate, to create win-wins, to look at values, to be with each other's emotional states in lieu of do this and you'll get that, or if you don't do this, this is the consequence of what's going to happen. And I have a big problem.
And I mean, ultimately, all of those kinds of behavior management tools ultimately orient a child out of their own body.
Right.
And into their mental processing in order to see what the external world wants from me and not actually orient to what's going on in their body. And playful parenting orients to the child's body and puts that at the center of the relationship and works with that. Because ultimately in neurobiology, or any kind of interpersonal neurobiology, whether it's with a child or whether it's with another adult, everybody we're in relationship with is setting us up to feel what it feels like to be them. So when we're around our children and we feel this kind of like, you know, activation, that's them showing us their activation in their system that's trying to look for somewhere to go. And with tools like playful parenting, which moves toward that dysregulation with a set of skills to help our child regulate, both of us then get to this beautiful place of connection and freedom within our nervous system, where parents aren't having to go and take the edge off with a drink or something, or a screen or whatever else adults tend to use, and the kids aren't having to numb and shut down and disconnect from their bodies. Both people get to work their nervous systems in co-regulation, and through laughter and lightheartedness, that means that, you know, we're all feeling connected, which I think is so beautiful, particularly to use, you know, at bedtime or at times of separation as well, like at times of transition.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe just let's talk about a few of those things. So, of course, the one that I tend to use a lot with cleaning up time, I used it the other day. My next door neighbour and I do babysitting swaps, and my daughter does not want to clean up before she has to leave there because she doesn't want to leave. So I can do all things like, come on, we've got to clean up. We've played with all these toys. It's so lovely to have the opportunity to do that. And then blah, blah, blah. And she's like, nope, no deal, not doing any of it. But I could pick up a toy and go, ooh, do you reckon I'm going to hit it? That, you know, that circle box thing that it's supposed to go in like a hoop. And I could throw that toy, get and go like, woo, I made a goal. I wonder if you'd get it. And she's like, boom, straight into it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can you play in a way that speaks to their values and makes it a game, but in the same time it's creating the win-win? How do you meet them where they're at? Move them through a stuck emotion with play, and at the same time get your needs met. Like for me, that's kind of the epitome of playful parenting, is creating the win-win in a way that allows you to both stimulate and move your nervous systems rather than feeling a stuck, agitated energy between you.
That's awesome. Another one I've got, because sometimes just when bedtime can feel monotonous, or it can feel like you're kind of dragging your kids to bedtime, I've got like this bedtime jar where my 4-year-old gets to pick which way she wants to go to bed. So like one's a magic carpet, one's a horsey ride, like, and it's like a lucky dip, like whichever one she picks out. So then it creates that excitement for the transition, as opposed to, oh no, I'm being made to go to bed.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I really like that one. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else.
You've done like toothbrush ones or something, haven't you?
Yeah, toothbrush ones. That was actually one of the ones from it's kind of I adapted it from one that Marianne Rose had in her attachment play course, which was Sylvie just loved it when I would try to find all the Halloween monsters in her teeth. Like, you know, so we'd talk about like, you know, the Halloween lollies, and, you know, it's important to brush your teeth. And so now she's like, are all the Halloween monsters gone? Like, you know, so she'll brush her teeth and like get me to have a look in her mouth. And because that can be a really big challenging point for a lot of parents, is the toothbrushing, getting our kids to be willing to brush their teeth. And so I do a lot of play around teeth brushing. So that, because I'm big on body autonomy as well, I don't want to force those things. And so that's why play can be beautiful, because so often, like 9 out of 10 times, the thing that is hard and obstructive and the child's resistant, as soon as you enter it with play, it's complete open up, complete like willingness to, like, even like nappy changes and things like that, which has been a big one at night time with my 4-year-old, who's still in a night nappy, and she was going through a stage of not wanting to put it on at all. And it was part of also, she knows that that means it's bedtime, you know, that's the last thing. And so what I would do, and I'd have to kind of manage my own activation, because I could feel the edge of me feeling frustrated, right? Like, because I'm tired, it's the end of the day, I just want you to get your nappy on. But it's me managing that activation within me and going, oh no, I have a choice here, what can I do? And so it's nonsense play. So I'm like, oh, your nappy doesn't go there, where's it go? Oh, I know where it goes. And I'm really convinced that it goes on her knee. And then she tells me, no, that's not where it goes. And then I'm really convinced it goes on her elbow. And she's like, no, that's not where it goes. And then I'm convinced, oh, I know. Why do I keep getting it wrong? Let me try it. I'm sure I'm going to get it right this time. You know, and I'll put it on her head. And then eventually she then tells me where it goes. And she's then 100% cooperative. Then we put it on properly and she's done. And, you know, what could have been really tension and like messy at bedtime was just something that was total willingness, right?
That's amazing.
So yeah, I love it. Pardon?
I do feel like hats off to you. Like, I do think that particularly that bedtime nappy thing is hard, because you're like done. You're like ready for them to be.
Yeah. And I think too, it's just simply having a toolkit of like things that you've got in your bag of tricks. And it's just like, what can I pull out right now, you know? And it's practice, I think. And it's overriding these programmed responses from our own upbringing that say, well, they should just do this and they need to learn the, you know, like kids need to learn the XYZ, right? And you shouldn't have to play because they should just know, when actually like the play is deeply purposeful for the child. It doesn't actually matter whatever agenda you have as an adult. Ultimately, you want the child to feel empowered and willing to do whatever it is we're asking them to do. And so I think play is a beautiful way to achieve that, because that's their language.
We used to do a bedtime one when my kids were little called Deer Hunters. I think I've said this before.
You have, yeah.
We have an older podcast called the Playful Parenting Masterclass, I think.
We did. I think we did a couple on that. Maybe.
Yeah. So that was always when particularly my eldest two, particularly for my son, it was always really important to have some sort of wrestle time before bed. So our bedtime always, I learned early on, was needed to ramp up the energy in order for them to crash out easily. If I tried to keep it calm and settled and the energy low, no one would go to bed. So I always knew, I mean, we always have dinner early. So we have dinner at 5:30, so that by 6 o'clock we're doing some sort of play. And by 6:30, everyone's in pajamas ready for bed. And then it's pretty much, there's a person per half hour from there on in my house. So 7:30, 8:30, and then all of mine are in bed. And having it all ready by 6:30 makes that easy. But what makes that easy is that at 6 o'clock, I know it's playtime, whatever that looks like. And sometimes, like tonight, that's going to look like playing as we clean up the kitchen together, because everybody is happy. My two daughters wanted to do like a love ceremony. So they were out there telling their dad how to be and what he had to do. And they were picking all of these roses. We have these beautiful roses, all these rose petals, putting thing, and then squealing with laughter when they called me out ready to have this surprise, and they would scatter rose petals everywhere. And like, you know, Nick and I like mortified. We're like, oh my God, this is so cringy. And they're giggling and they think it's the funniest thing. And every time they throw rose petals at me, it's hilarious. You know, and I think, so that was their play. And then that looked like cooperation of, can you just grab those Barbies off the floor and pop them away? Lozzie, you're on dishes tonight. I'm going to go put Gwen to bed. Bang, done. Yeah. But unless they've got that part of connection, it's pretty hard to ask them to cooperate. I think. As kids get older, I think play exists still, but it looks really different. So instead of being, how can I create a fantasy world with you that takes you to an edge that you're trying to process, or it's like the breadcrumbs, isn't it? Tracing the breadcrumbs to the ecstatic laughter, you know, as opposed to that type of thing. It becomes more like, how do we like repartee here? What does this look like? So, for instance, you and I caught up today and I was saying to you, it's not working in our house anymore. The household cleaning situation is not working anymore. And we'd hash that around together today. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally ready to have that conversation. So I'd sat down at dinner tonight and just said, look, you know, this isn't working. What is this going to look like? And if we haven't done pocket money up until now, and my eldest is 15 or nearly 15. And what would this look like? And so we negotiated around what it would look like and what everybody's roles would be. And they were really excited. And then I said, okay, so what would feel like a fair exchange? What would have you feeling like you're really ready and wanting to do this and it's worth your time? What would have you feeling like that? And it was so interesting watching my daughter, because just the day before she'd sat in on a conversation with my mother-in-law and I about my father being this insane like bargainer when it comes to like buying cars or something, and she applied his toolkit in that moment.
Oh, wow. How cool
Isn't that genius? I was like watching her going, wow, this is fascinating to me. I said to her, so, you know, what do you think that's worth? And she's like, I don't know. What do you think it's worth? And I'm like, well, what's your baseline? And she's going, oh, no. You're the used car salesman. You're giving me your baseline first. And I was like, this is fantastic. So great. So she's doing that and we're having this negotiation that looks exactly like the blueprint of her grandfather's essentially steps that she just listened to yesterday in a conversation. All the while my son's on his phone, I look around and go, what are you doing? He goes, hang on a minute. I am looking up the hourly wage rate for house cleaners. And I'm like, oh my God, this is genius. Like, you can see two completely different value systems, two completely different ways of looking at the world. And I'm just laughing the whole time going, I am tickled pink watching you experience the world. And at the same time, knowing you and I are going to get to a win-win, but we get to enjoy the experience of the negotiation through this, what could be a sticky bit, and instead can be quite fun and funny.
Yeah.
So that's play for an older kid. It's like flirting as adults, right? It's like a little bit of a cheeky this and a little bit of a cheeky that. And that's what play looks like. And all of a sudden we've moved through this experience with lots of giggling and laughter and, you know, a few outrageous comments and trying out new ways of being and belonging to the world that sort of stretch outside your comfort zone just a little bit. And I'm looking for that. I'm looking for, how do I take you beyond those edges? Because my daughter, interestingly, wants to undervalue herself with money and my son wants to overvalue himself with money. So we're looking at different values. So I'm looking at, okay, I know that about them. How do I stretch each of them in these conversations with these plays and pokes? And, you know, it's a little bit more, you know, playful, pokey. And we get to the end of that. Everyone's happy, connected, giggly, ready to get on with the night for dishes and all the rest of the stuff and feeling super empowered. And I think that's play. That could have gone very differently had I wanted to rule with an iron fist and be like, this isn't working. Nobody respects me. I'm taken for granted. Like, that would have been a completely different scenario.
Totally. It would have just bred resentment.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, it is really cool. So I was thinking about that before, going, play still exists. It just actually looks a little bit more like flirtation as they get older. Like, it's just this, like, remove any connotation you have to entwining sexuality and flirtation. They're two different things. Flirtation is just a stacking in a building of energy where everyone leaves feeling more high vibing. It's an energy exchange. And that's what play is.
And I think at every age, play is also, or ultimately also, the place that you can access when you breathe open your own rigidity. So because you can't play where you are rigid. So the point at which you feel rigid and like, you know, like almost like covered, you know, like, you know, arms are crossed, you feel like you're not budging. Well, that's actually your point to invite yourself to soften or to open in a play, like, you know, and to meet your child with a different energy. Because every time we meet our child with that energy, with the, you know, the closed, my way or the highway, you're wrong, I'm right, whatever, it's not going anywhere great. Whereas play is what we can bring in at any age knowing that the form's going to look slightly different, to open ourselves beyond those points and wrestle with our own black and whiteness.
So good. The other one that I was just reflecting on that I always look out for in playtime is if two kids are having trouble getting on together, they need to have the war outside of them rather than the war between them, right? As a universal law. So I know, me too.
Where you're going with this? I
just think about it all the time, and it becomes so clear to me now that I almost can't believe there was a time I didn't see it. So I always see that clash, particularly if it's two friends or they're trying to board two siblings and they're trying to integrate or work together. I think, okay, so it's my job here to offer them the thing on which they're united, they become united from. So, you know, that might be, hey, you two come pick on someone your own size. Or it might be that there's an activity that bonds them together that has them being on the same team. So whatever it is, I'm looking at what does the play look like where they have a united front or goal, and it might be against me, or it might be in pursuit of an end goal that brings them together in a collaborative way.
It can be a complete channel change, that kind of thing. Like if you hear them kind of bickering and like, no, you did it. No, it was your fault. No, it was your fault. And you just go in, no, it was me, you know, and totally just change the dynamic up a bit. And then they can kind of look at you and it just shifts it all. And then usually you can have a conversation about what actually happened away from, you know, them being at each other constantly.
How cool is that? I think it's super rad. Are there any last playful parenting things that you really love?
I think with play too, I mean, there's lots of things I love, and I'm trying to think what some more of them are. I think I often follow my kids' cues as well. Like, so particularly now my 7-year-old knows what to ask for. So he'll be asking for wrestles, or he'll want to go on a piggyback ride around the house. And another great one too is, and this is a lot that's talked about in Aware Parenting, is this idea of power reversal. And, you know, as our kids get older, particularly ones who are in school, or in any kind of care setting where they're not feeling like they have a lot of power or choice, play is a really great way for them to play out what that looks like with them being in control. And so even a fun one with my 7-year-old is when I have him on my back and he has to steer me around the house. So at like the last minute, he gets to tell me which way I go, like whether do I go left or do I go right? And then if it's too much at the last minute and I feel like confused or overwhelmed, then what I do is actually verbalize those feelings, because then I think, okay, there's a setup here too. Like there's a setup for me to actually help him play out his school day. So if I'm like kind of feel like I'm going to crash against the wall, or if I feel like I'm not sure which way he's going to ask me to go, I'm going to say, oh, I don't know which way to go. You told me at the last minute. I was worried that I was going to go the wrong way. And then I feel like that kind of verbalization of my own internal feelings as we're playing gives voice to what he may also be needing to process from his day at school, where he may have wrestled with all of those same feelings. Because in play, again, they're setting up the perfect, you know, dynamic or kind of like scene for them, for them to play through whatever's going on for them. And then I think it's just a beautiful window into their world that we can just be, you know, in rapture with. You know, and I love that. I love that idea that we can look at it in that way and it be so much more than simply just play or simply just us having an agenda, but rather a way to meet our child in a way that we may otherwise not be able to access if we didn't have that awareness.
I really love that, and I love that you said the dynamic is there, because it's so true, isn't it? Like they set you up to feel as they feel.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of that, the orchestration of whatever game you're playing is in some way representative of their day or their held on to experience or feelings, and how perhaps that can even shift your own mental capacity to be with it.
Yeah.
Being pulled forward by a different meaning.
Yeah, and I think what I love about bringing this in, like you outlined before, like before bed, is it can be actually energy giving, you know, because we can often think, oh no, I'm so tired from my day and like, you know, I don't have capacity. But, you know, when you can tap into the source of what's possible through this kind of play, then we actually gain energy from it. Like we actually all get to feel good. It's not just another thing to do. But I would also say, there needs to be congruency as well. Like there's going to be times where you don't have the bandwidth to play, or that or that to play would be really inauthentic. Like, so perhaps if you've got some big emotions that you're processing and you can't shift out of those, then it's actually more authentic to tell your child, I can't right now. And that's a beautiful model for them. So also don't kind of like should on yourself that, you know,
it's not about coercing your body beyond what you're not trying to move away from your body signals, you're trying to move in alignment with them.
Yes, yes. So we actually have in Soul Driven Motherhood coming up next week. We've got Shelley Clark coming to speak all around this topic, all around some key areas in which to bring play in. So play through cooperation and transitions, play at bedtime, using play in a way to meet anger, but also doing it authentically, because play can actually be a beautiful way to process anger, but it needs to be done with a level of awareness so that it stays in integrity with both, you know, you and your child. And so Shelley is who we actually had recently on the podcast, who shared her miscarriage story. And Shelley is also a hand-in-hand parenting instructor and an aware parenting instructor. So both of those paradigms of parenting have at their core playful parenting principles. And so she's full of enormous amounts of wonderful ideas and practices and approaches for people to implement this. So we're really excited to have Shelley come and speak to our beautiful community in Soul Driven Motherhood.
And it's so lovely. Like, I just say it again, it's so lovely just to have reminders and refreshers.
Yeah, isn't it?
You know, like, I just don't think you can hear the basics often enough. Like, how many times, like every day I could probably hear, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something super simple now that I hear is just breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That reminder. I think it's the same with conscious parentings. I do think we can get too cerebral about it.
Yeah. And also because a lot of this stuff is not a mainstream kind of practice that you're going to see everywhere, it's important to continually kind of have your power source that you can plug in to repower up you know, that practice. And so we hope that this episode has been an invitation to do that, and that whether, like us, you have a bookshelf, you know, that you can reference, or that you have the opportunity to come into Soul Driven Motherhood and watch and take part in Shelley's workshop, which will also be a great way to actually ask questions around your specific challenges too. So Shelley will likely have ideas that she can provide to help move through particular challenges that are coming up with your kids as well, which is just enormously helpful.
Enormously helpful. And just to have a community like Soul Driven Motherhood, I'm grateful for it. I think we have the most beautiful conversations in there.
Me too.
So, and that's just $39 a month Australian. So if you're really interested in having a support network, then that's definitely the place to find that, because it's weekly workshops and just delicious group of conscious women trying to find their way just like you. So you can find out more about Soul Driven Motherhood and the workshop we have coming up at nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram. And to connect with you, Bridget.
Sandcastles.com. And you, Jules?
Well, I'm actually going to start changing it. So it was thepleasurenutritionist.com, but as it turns out, a lot of people have a problem spelling nutritionist.
Really?
Yes, it's like too many I's and T's, and no one can work out in what order that is supposed to go. So it is now julietenner.love.
Love that you have a .love.
How cool is that? I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I'm getting that.
That is so cool.
I know, it is so cool. So I am going to start. So the Pleasure Nutritionist will still redirect to that, but instead of saying it on here, I'm going to start saying you can connect with me at julietenner.love.
Love it.
We should say before we wrap up, Kids Kindness Advent Collective we have coming up. Yes. So you can jump in for $22, which gives you the access to the PDF, the 4 weeks in the collective group, which is designed to keep you inspired, to keep you moving along. We're always going to be 1 week ahead of our children's Advent. So we've got time to set up and prepare workshops from makers and creators, shifts and changes from last year's. It's not simply about having a PDF that you follow. It's about being able to plug into an energetic container in which you can receive that energy that keeps you going and inspired to do something that is really quite anti our culture. We're talking about raising a humanitarian spirit and creating a sense of conscious, loving and gift spirit of giving in the festive season. And that tends to be quite different to our hedonistic society. So to be able to stay plugged into that, we really invite you to come and join that. So $22 for one person, or bring a friend, and it's $33 for the both of you, which would be really beautiful to have you there.
It will. So remember to nourish the woman. What is it?
I keep forgetting to. Can I just say, I have a book coming out on the 5th of December. I should actually start saying that in the podcast. I have a book coming out on the 5th of December. It's called Flowers and Honey, The Art of Relationship, Love and Desire. So you can get that on an ebook as a pre-order for US 99 cents, and link is in both Nourishing the Mother and julietenner.love bio. Or you can wait till December 5 and there will be, you'll be able to purchase the printed book on the release date, which is December 5. So please stay tuned.
I cannot wait to have that book in my hands.
Well, and can I say, I just booked Bridget in today, who's going to MC my book launch for the virtual book launch.
Yes.
We'll be
so we'll be providing details of how to do that too.
Yes. Now, Bridget, you can go.
Okay. Remember to nourish the woman, to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.